Okay, hey everybody, Eric and Elliot back with segment 3, trying the podcast method out. So our third segment is going to be on attendance management. Management has a policy drafted, which they have shared with the local exec. Elliot's here to discuss the policy, some issues with it, and what you can expect to see when it pops up.
Hi again, everybody. So on attendance management, if you've been paying attention over the last number of years, employers already started this. They've already started to have attendance management meetings with people. And don't quote me, I could be wrong on the triggers, but there is, I remember hearing at one point, if you've hit 75% of your casual sick leave bank every year for like the last 2 years or 5 years, whatever it was, you found yourself in a meeting to talk about that. And the meeting should have gone something like, hey, we've noticed XYZ, and we want to know what we can do to have you at work more often. And that's typically how the conversations should have gone. But I don't think, well, I know I was never involved in any meeting with any member at the first stage or the first meeting. And so having a union rep was not a routine fixture at these meetings. It was more of a question with the employer and a chat with them where they learned what was going on with you, taking you away from work so often, and offering you any services or help that they could have at their disposal to get you there more. One of the things that we were constantly critical of that approach was, well, members wouldn't know what behavior last year would get you into a meeting this year. And because of that, unfortunately, the trigger to a lot of the meetings was this like, oh crap moment when the employer realized someone's used up all their sick time and they've phoned in sick for the 19th time, and payroll identifies the issue as we can't pay them. Or the PC says, you've got no time left in your bank. So typically, when we never really knew what the triggers were and it wasn't well executed or explained, it was a little bit like witchcraft. It was a little bit of roulette of the PC, the HR rep, your behavior, how public it was or how apparent it was. And the truth is, we as a trade, we'll trample all over that as a trade union. It's inconsistent. The members could be set up, I could argue members would be set up to fail with that type of approach. And so we've been actually asking for, well, what are your expectations? How this needs to be, if you're going to apply this practice, it needs to be consistently applied. We've been saying that for years. And HR has always said, no, we do it on a case-by-case basis, which we always said, that's nonsense. You got to have some expectation or standard for your people. So recently, one of our deputy chiefs is very much in agreement with that, has developed a policy around it. And this policy, the executive board has had the opportunity to take a look at, which is a little bit irregular from typical policy development, because usually we get a chance to look at employer policy when they're in the stakeholder review phase of the policy, which is really after they've been written and endorsed by management, and then they go out to all stakeholders of the organization before they become public and released. This one, because it's just labor heavy, we had asked and were given permission to take a look at this thing in advance so we could see how it stacks up from a labor perspective and industry standard perspective and get a legal opinion on. And we've got those now. So here goes. The premise of an employer developing attendance management policy is well established in labor law. And when we asked our lawyer this question, he says, in fact, there's case law dating back many decades indicating that an employer is right to question an employee about their sick utilization. So we have 18 sick days in our contract. I know that we have some members who hold the opinion, I have 18 sick days per year. You can't question me about them, or you have no right to question me if I use all 18 of them. They are mine and mine to use, and I will always use them. But we heard from our lawyer about a member who holds that opinion, who's loud and clear. He said, I asked him, similar to how I asked in the last episode about ACPs and PCPs, how does that story end? And in this case, he says that story ends with termination. And there's decades of case law where arbitrators are upholding wrongful termination claims for people utilizing the absolute most amount of casual sick time or sick utilization from their employer. They've been terminated and it's been upheld by an arbitrator. So point is, the case law, the employer has the right to terminate you if they believe that they can bring someone in who will be at work more often. Now, there's circumstances here. This is heavy in circumstances and the yeah buts, the what ifs, and the individual person of the policy being applied to. Where I have to give our employer's policy some credit, it seems to take that into account. And so follow me. My understanding of the policy, and there are some triggers that we're trying to get a better sense of, but they will be in a policy. So there won't be witchcraft into what behavior gets you into a Q&A with the employer. But once you're there, the conversation we understand is going to go, hey, we noticed that you hit this trigger, blah, 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 whatever it was. And we want to know how we can get you at work more often. Are you okay? Is there something that we can offer you? Do you need help in any way? Which I think is an appropriate conversation to have. And maybe a quick rabbit hole I'd like to go down is, it's probably no surprise to anybody listening, but Eric and I, we deal quite a lot with our members who are utilizing a lot of casual sick leave, general sick leave, or on LTD, and the people who maybe repeatedly or habitually do so. And it may appear to those of us who are still slugging away on the ambulance, doing 4 on 4 off, at work all of the time, giving it our all, that these people have it easy. They're on easy street. Oh, it must be nice to call in sick that much, or insert whatever soundbite you've heard used before. But I can guarantee you, the people that are in those circumstances, you would not want to switch places with them. There is something happening. If a member uses, again, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I did the math, I just don't have it in front of me. If a member uses all of their casual sick leave bank every year, and all of their general sick leave bank every year, and all of their vacation entitlement every year, we work 2,184 hours per year on a 4 on 4 off schedule. If you utilize all of those banks, the last time I added it up, I want to say you were absent from work just over 50% of the time, 55% of the time, I think was the number I came up with. Someone who is an abuser of these banks will be at work half as much as the rest of us, or the rest of the people who are there all the time. And that's not including if they go on to LTD. And if they go on to LTD, we pay 100% of the premiums for a member on LTD, meaning it doesn't cost the employer a dime if we have someone abusing the system and getting into LTD at the end of the rope. So as an association, we are in support of this work, generally speaking, because we want these banks shored up and protected for the member who needs them. We don't want them protected for the member who's abusing them and always using them. We want the person who's always using them to get the resources and the help that they need to be healthy and happy in their home life and in their work life. And we believe that when that happens, they'll be at work more often. And when they're at work more often, we have more people in seats, we have more favorable seat assignments, particularly for more senior members, and less burnout of the people who are at work. So we ultimately think that there's value to the association. Another piece, and this is not to fearmonger, and this is long down the road, but if we were to say fight this and be reluctant to change and really force the employer to allow members to use up all of these banks, there's good case law to say that they have an argument to an arbitrator to say, dear arbitrator, it's time to break ground on the 18 sick days these firefighters get, because here's the hardship that we endure with it. They've been reluctant to letting us really advance it with the members, and the association's been fighting us. We need you to rule in, we need you to weigh in and say, let's give these guys less through the contract. Arbitrators don't break ground. They don't like to unless they're compelled to do so. So we also don't want to give the employer a compelling argument to take this into the bargaining table and then potentially into an arbitrator's world. We want to continue to work with them through it so that there's not a run at giving us lesser utilization or lesser banks to utilize, because we want them there in case you need it. So there is a rabbit hole about what we're doing and why we're doing it and what we see the consequences. I was saying the first time you're in one of these meetings, you'll know the triggers, and then it's prescribed that they're going to meet with you. And then following the meeting, I think it's at 6 months after that, they follow up with you again. So it's routine, it's frequent, and it's predictable, which makes it consistent for our members, for the association, and it makes it easier to apply and easier to work through, rather than waiting for you to run out of sick time, payroll wondering how they're going to pay you, and then that be the trigger to your next and subsequent follow-up meeting. So what we like about the process, I want to say top of my head, the policy would read that there's 6 meetings. The first 3 would be much more, are you okay? Can we help you? We've noticed this. Oh, we've noticed it again. How is it going? What more can we offer you? Okay, now we're meeting you again. And by this point, we're 18 months down the road and you're still there. The latter 3 meetings, we get more disciplinary. They get harsher and the tone would likely go something like, it's been 2 years now of you registering and hitting these triggers that are in the policy about your attendance management. We've offered you X, Y, Z of resources. You've indicated all the way along, whatever you've indicated, but here we are still. So the latter part of them get a little bit more escalatory in nature. And the end of the rope, the end of the story, if you hold the opinion, no, I get 18 sick days a year, and or here's my frequency, here's my pattern. I always call in sick on Fridays, or I always call in sick when I'm scheduled to attend on an ambulance night shift. Whatever the trigger is, if you hold the opinion that they're irrelevant and you get 18 and the employer can't talk to you about it, the policy would lead to your termination. And that would be upheld by an arbitrator, not one that we would probably take to arbitration, because the legal advice we would likely get is that it's not winnable, nor is it worth us putting the money as an association in to take to an arbitration. Point is, this is the case law. And this is what we feel our part of our job is to represent you in advising you the risks and the threats that you may run if you hold a certain opinion, or what your behavior may be. Now, like I said, these are all heavy in the circumstances, meaning if you're in these meetings and you say something like, oh my God, I know, I had this happen in this part of the year, and then I broke a bone here, and then I got sick here, and then my kid got sick there, and then I got divorced and I needed to take this mental health leave or whatever it is. The employer is not ignorant to that you're a human with a life, and life happens and shit happens, and they will accommodate to the best of their ability. But when those asks become routine and become frequent or become egregious or laborious for the employer, that's when you're going to start to find yourself in hotter and hotter water. But the employer's goal here is to get you at work, to see you healthy and happy, and to give the rest of the workforce reprieve by having all the people that they've hired at work as often as they possibly can be. So I also, this, like many things, I don't think it's something to be terribly concerned about. And by and large, I think 90% of our people behave in a way that they just inherently will never hit a trigger on this policy. So this is not a big item for the vast majority of our members. Those that this does affect, I suspect at this point, you should probably already know that the employer has spoken to you about your attendance and your sick utilization, and it likely isn't a surprise to you. But also part of this process includes union representation. So should you find yourself in one of these meetings, whether they explicitly invite the union rep with you or not, you have the right to a union rep. You also have the right to waive a union rep. By contract, it says that a union rep will be provided at a disciplinary meeting, but in a trade union, industry standard, contract aside, if you're summoned to a meeting with the employer and you want a union rep with you, just ask and we'll bring you one. Eric?
Okay, thanks for that, Elliot. So in summary, a new attendance management policy is coming. The legal opinion is this is within management's right to manage, and chronic abuse of sick time is a fireable offense. So if you find yourself going down this path, just utilize your union reps and just know that you'll have many chances along the way to demonstrate improvement. So thanks to everybody for listening. This concludes the first attempt at podcast style communication, but we hope this form of communication is useful and user-friendly. And of course, we would appreciate any comments, any feedback to improve for next time. So send any comments to eric.low@strathconaFirefighters.com. All podcast episodes will be loaded to the app under the 2461 news section.